Today, Metropolitan's Nick Madrigal is the latest New York Met. He signs with the team on a split deal, but what's that do for Jose Iglesias? We're going to break that down today. Plus, John Hamer reports over at the New York Post the Mets have offered a non-guaranteed deal to Mark Canha. Or is it Canha? Real OGs know this one. What's going on, everybody? You are locked into Mets Digest. My name is Flobo Boyce, and thank you so much for helping this channel grow. Almost 4,000 people are subscribed to the channel, but you don't want to be left out if you're not. Make sure you like the video, comment. We love comments, and subscribe to the channel to make sure you're in the know of what's going on. You know, it is Royal Rumble season. I'm a big wrestling fan, so I'm excited about that, but it kind of feels people are piling on to the team now as we hit to the last waning moments of the offseason. Pitchers and catchers report in just a couple of weeks, and so you kind of want to see what the Mets are going to be because we still don't have an answer when it comes to the Pete Alonso situation. And one of the players that was always on the limb with the whole Pete Alonso thing was Jose Iglesias, you know, Mr. OMG himself. Would you need him on the roster with Pete? Probably, but you would have to get something different if Pete decides to go elsewhere and if Mark Vientos moves over, and that would be a cascading effect. But the Mets today, the last day of January, signed Nick Madrigal, who is basically played on both sides of Chicago, being with the White Sox and the Cubs, on a split deal, which gives him an opportunity, the team the opportunity, to put him in the minor leagues if need be. This broke a couple hours ago as I record this. Nick Madrigal is on the team. But before we get into what this means, let's see what it says here when it comes to the Mets.com official report. Shout out to Anthony DeComo for this one. The Mets struck a deal for another potential bench bat on Friday, signing infielder Nick Madrigal to a one-year pact. It's a split contract worth different amounts in the majors and minors. On paper, Madrigal is a replacement for Jose Iglesias. Remember, that on paper phrase is super important. The popular infielder whom the Mets have not pursued aggressively in free agency. Unlike Iglesias, Madrigal has an accessible minor league option. And also Madrigal is about 6 or 7 years younger. I think he's not even 30 yet compared to Iglesias, who'll be approaching his age 36 season. Allowing the Mets to start him at AAA Syracuse if they desire. You know what's interesting? I was actually reading this on social media a couple days ago that the Syracuse Mets, or the Sky Chiefs, or the Chiefs, haven't really won a championship in like 40 years, but I always feel like our AAA team just seems stacked of just potential upon potential. But that gives the Mets options when it comes to spring training. And so because of the profile that Nick Madrigal has, being an infielder, really having flashes of offensive brilliance, but hasn't really shown those over the past couple of seasons, or season and a half, people are kind of lamenting the fact that he's a one-for-one swap for Iglesias. I don't quite see it that way, but I can understand. But take a look first over at the stats. So you look at the on-base situation, you look at the home runs, the power is not going to be there. Iglesias didn't really have power either. But whereas Madrigal has an advantage, if you don't mind me saying, is one, his age. He's definitely in the late 20s, age 27 season, and he has peaked before with a higher batting average, especially when he was on the Chicago White Sox side before he moved over to the north side. But then a lot of these things is really just profiling defensive, something that Jose Iglesias did too. But I have to be honest with you, there are two things that Iglesias has that Madrigal doesn't. Its consistency is number one. That's the most important thing because there was really large stretches of the season in 2024 where Iglesias was actually the more consistent hot hitter. He had multiple hitting streaks for the team and really buoyed the team when we had people covering for everyone else, next man up situation. The other thing is, and I know OMG is a joke, Fox Sports made it a joke last year in the playoffs, but the heart and culture of the team that came out of absolutely nowhere rallied around a song that Iglesias wrote. I understand that doesn't guarantee you a job for life, but man, what an enviable position to be in for someone like Madrigal if he does gets called up to the show. Here's Iglesias' stats if you're just curious. So yes, he does give up a couple years in age, almost a decade's worth, but 8 years or so, but definitely has more healthier numbers. And if I was playing a video game with these stats, I probably would lean on the age of veteranness. But again, without any minor league options, there's really no flexibility for the Mets to shift Iglesias around if the infield still needs to be worked on. And being worked on is what really is the name of the game here. Again, we mentioned in a couple of videos, we don't know the Pete Alonso situation, but you do have Mark Vientos, who's a corner infielder, and you have the young core of Luis Angel Acuna. Is Brett Beatty going to be on his redemption arc? Is Ronnie Mauricio going to be on his redemption arc? And I actually looked up Jeff McNeil's contract status. He's on the hook to about at least 2027, where the team has a club option. So you got to have a space for him as well. So depth upon depth is great. It's good to have that, especially because baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. But you're going to be able to have to replace that with youth, replace that with someone who's as capable. And with Iglesias, you have to keep him on the bench, on the 26-man roster. Will Salmon of The Athletic actually goes into more detail about the Madrigal signing. He says, Madrigal puts the ball in play and hardly ever strikes out, just 9% of the time over his career. He doesn't hit balls especially hard or find barrels, however. With the Chicago White Sox and over his first 2 seasons, Madrigal, the 4th pick in the 2018 draft, which seems like a while ago, /317, 358, 406, but it hasn't matched that production since, because baseball's hard, bro. Over his past 3 seasons, all spent with the Chicago Cubs, Madrigal has slashed his 251, 304, and 312. So it does look like it's a profiling downward, but maybe we got to do the whole in David Stearns we trust situation here. I'm not saying it's a bad call. I get it. You want to have the split contract, give yourself an option as a team. Depth is good. Madrigal is not necessarily a bum, but head to head and culture to culture, it does seem like a, quote, downgrade for a certain swath of fans. And plus, I know even OMG probably wouldn't have worked again this year as a rallying cry. Iglesias will ever be forever woven into New York Mets lore despite his tenure if he does decide to move on. I think a lot of these decisions would have been made earlier and we would have a lot more time to deal with the situation. But again, it's the whole Pete Alonso thing that has a cascading effect. And speaking about cascading effect, first baseman / corner outfielder Mark Canha, that Mark Canha was given an offer by the Mets to reunite for the team. This was originally reported by the New York Post and John Heyman, retweeted or reposted over at SNY TV about the idea of the Mets coming together with a nice guy. Mark Canha, he was a kind of a talisman in the clubhouse, really great foodie, champion of equal rights. Guy was a good guy. Is he worth coming back to New York? Danny Abriano writes, New York offered a free agent Mark Canha to a non-guaranteed deal, per John Heyman of the New York Post, who does not specify exactly when this offer was made. I assume this week at some time. Canha, who's entering his age 36 season, kind of old, I guess, /242, 344, and 346 with 7 home runs, 20 doubles, 46 runs scored, and 42 RBI in 125 games for the Tigers and the Giants in 2024. So I have to ask you there, dear listener, if you made it this far, what say you about a potential reuniting with Mark Canha? The advantages here: someone who understands the culture, someone who understands playing in New York, loved by the fans, and pretty consistent. And he plays first base if you decide Pete Alonso is not going to be on the team for next season. But even though he played 125 games with the Tigers last season, when he was on the Mets, it was really about his time management, spelling him for certain games as well. So he's not going to be an everyday player, especially at age 36. But interesting to have someone at least put themselves in the mix for spring training if the contract is not guaranteed. I don't know. I would say it's a very low risk for New York with a potentially high reward. And I kind of felt that I kind of see Mark Canha in my own mind's eye lifting up the chip at the end of the season. But I want your opinions on this one. Nick Madrigal going to New York. Mark Canha offered the opportunity to be reunited in Queens. I guess the hot stove is still going. Almost everything but the Pete Alonso thing. I don't know. It is a crazy time here for Mets lore, the orange and blue. We're still rolling through. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. We'll be back with more stuff as it gets closer to spring training. Once again, my name is Flobo Boyce. I'm one half of the team here. The other side, Mike D'Angelo, also has content on the channel, so make sure you support him as well. And until next time, as always, it's LGM to the bitter end.